we all know the basics of cognitive dissonance.
Right. Absolutely.
It's basically the mental gymnastics we do when reality just completely contradicts our deeply held beliefs.
Oh, yeah. We see it all the time.
You've probably used the exact phrase to describe that one friend who was dating a walking red flag.
We all have that friend.
Right. Like, everyone sees it, but when you gently point out the terrible behavior, your friend doesn't break up with them.
No. They double down.
Exactly. Instead, they defend the partner even harder. I mean, we are entirely used to seeing human beings double down to protect their egos.
It's a very human thing to do.
But what if I told you that right now, the scientific community is in a massive brawl over whether cognitive dissonance is even real?
It is honestly a genuinely surprising controversy.
Yeah.
We are looking at a highly publicized piece from the New Yorker magazine published in 2025.
Right. Written by S. Love.
Exactly. And the title poses a pretty blunt question. It asks, is cognitive dissonance actually a thing?
Which is a bold question to ask.
It really is. And the strong implication throughout the entire piece is a resounding no.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to dismantle a foundational pillar of modern psychology here.
They really are going after the foundation.
So today, we are diving into a direct rebuttal to that New Yorker piece. It's an article from Psychology Today by Dr. Eddie Harmon-Jones.
He's a very prominent psychology professor, by the way.
Right. And he argues that the New Yorker reporter essentially, ignored thousands of pieces of empirical evidence to construct this debunking narrative.
Just swept them under the rug.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to figure out if cognitive dissonance is actually a myth or if the people trying to debunk it are accidentally proving it exists.
To really understand the New Yorker's attack, we kind of have to rewind to the actual birth of the theory.
The origin story.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people casually use the term, but very few know the origin story from 1956.
That's wild.
It is. A psychologist named Leon Festinger, along with his colleagues Riken and Schachter, well, they embedded themselves in a doomsday cult.
I have vaguely heard about this, but they actually, infiltrated the group.
They did. This was a classic participant-observer study.
Wow.
The cult members believed with, absolute certainty that the world would end on a specific date.
And wasn't there a spaceship involved?
Yes. They thought a flying saucer would rescue the true believers. So Festinger's team is literally in the room as the clock ticks down to midnight.
Just sitting there waiting for the end of the world.
Right. And these believers had, quit their jobs, given away their life savings, cut ties with their family.
And then midnight passes.
Midnight passes.
No flying saucer.
No flying saucer.
The world doesn't end. A logical person would look around, realize they made a huge mistake, and go home devastated.
You would think so. But Festinger observed the exact opposite.
Which is crazy.
When the prophecy failed, the core members actually intensified their beliefs.
Wait, they doubled down.
Completely. They suddenly claimed their dedication and their prayers had actually saved the world.
Oh, wow. So they made themselves the heroes.
Exactly. They started proselytizing harder than ever. And Festinger realized that when humans face a massive clash between a deeply ingrained belief and undeniable reality,
the psychological discomfort kicks in.
Right, the dissonance. It's literally perceived by the brain as a threat.
So it's like a defense mechanism.
Yes. To resolve that intense discomfort, if you cannot change the physical reality of the world, your brain just does backflips to change your perception of it.
So the New Yorker looked at this wild origin story and, decided it was flawed?
They targeted it specifically. First, they argued that participant observation is inherently subjective.
Sure, just by being in the room, the researchers might have influenced the cult's dynamics.
Right, that's a fair critique. But their main argument focused on the timeline.
The timeline, what do you mean?
The author pointed out that months and years later, the cult eventually splintered. The members drifted apart. So the New Yorker's premise was that, if the belief intensification wasn't permanent, it wasn't real.
Oh, I see.
And thereby invalidating Festinger's entire theory.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following that logic. Because that is like saying airplanes don't exist because the right flyer only stayed in the air for 12 seconds and then crashed into the sand.
That is a great way to put it.
It was just a proof of concept. Just because the cult members eventually succumbed to reality months later doesn't erase the fact that their immediate psychological reflex was to double down.
if we connect this to the bigger picture, Festinger never actually predicted that humans are permanently immune to reality.
Right. We're not totally delusional forever.
Exactly. Our cognitive systems do update over time. The dissonance eventually becomes too heavy to maintain, or, the social support network fractures.
And reality wins out eventually.
Yes. What the New Yorker omitted is that in his 1956 book, Festinger laid out 5 very precise conditions for belief intensification to occur.
5 conditions. Like what?
Well, he detailed factors like the belief having to be deeply held and the believer having to take public action that is difficult to undo.
Like quitting your job or selling your house.
Exactly. And the disconfirming evidence having to be undeniable. He was defining a very specific behavioral reflex under specific parameters.
Not a permanent state of delusion.
Exactly.
Okay, so the 1956 study is a crazy origin story.
Yeah.
But you can't base 70 years of psychological science on one UFO cult.
No, you really can't.
If the cult is too chaotic, how do scientists measure this in a controlled environment? Because if this is a real human reflex, we should be able to trigger it in a lab without waiting for the end of the world.
We do. We absolutely do. And that is Dr. Harmon-Jones's primary counter-argument.
Oh, okay.
The New Yorker article sort of implied the theory rests on this one dusty, subjective cult study.
Right.
But they completely bypass decades of controlled laboratory experiments where individuals are forced to make difficult decisions or act counter to their own values.
Yeah, the source text actually brings up one of those modern studies, and it's highly specific.
It is very specific.
Real quick, I want to be very clear with you listening. We are simply reporting the parameters and the results of a psychological experiment detailed in our sources.
Yes, just the facts of the study.
We are not taking any stance on the religious subject matter itself. We are strictly looking at the cognitive mechanisms.
Exactly. So the study is a textbook example of controlled belief disconfirmation.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Researchers took a group of Christian participants and presented them with an article that indicated, supposedly with evidence, that Jesus was not the Son of God.
Wow. So they are taking a foundational belief and just hitting it head on with disconfirming information.
Precisely.
They're artificially creating that exact moment the cult members felt when the clock struck midnight.
Yes. They are inducing massive cognitive dissonance. The core belief in the individual's mind clashes violently with the text in front of them.
And what happened?
Well, according to the study, after their beliefs were disconfirmed by this new information, the participants actually intensified their belief in Jesus' divinity.
Oh, wow. So they fortified the mental walls.
It really did.
When faced with contradictory facts, they didn't weaken their stance at all.
Not at all. This raises an important question, though. How often do you see this exact dynamic play out in everyday life?
Oh, constantly.
Right. In politics, in health choices, in financial decisions. When someone is presented with clear facts that contradict a deeply held worldview, the default human reaction is almost never a graceful pivot.
No, definitely not.
It is usually a defensive intensification.
It's the friend with the terrible partner all over again.
Exactly.
Presenting them with an itemized list of the partner's flaws just makes the friend defend the relationship louder.
Yes, the exact same mechanism.
So this religious experiment, along with thousands of others, proves that the doomsday cult wasn't an anomaly at all. It's a measurable reflex.
Yes, a very measurable one.
But wait, if the Jesus study and thousands of others are so ironclad, why on earth would a major publication risk their reputation to claim the whole concept is a myth?
That's the big question.
I mean, they must have found a massive crack in the foundation somewhere to feel that confident.
They did think they found one. They leaned heavily on a massive recent failure to replicate a classic dissonance experiment.
Okay, tell me about this failure.
So in 2024, a multi-lab study by Vides and his colleagues attempted to test what is called the induced compliance paradigm.
Hold on, induced compliance paradigm.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
What does that actually mean in plain English for someone who hasn't taken a Psych 101 class recently?
Fair point. Okay, imagine you strongly believe something, and I ask you to engage in a behavior that completely contradicts that belief.
Okay.
The 2024 study recreated a famous setup. Researchers asked university students to write a persuasive essay.
Students hate tuition increases.
Exactly. They are being asked to act completely against their own beliefs.
So writing the essay creates the dissonance.
Right.
The brain basically says, I hate tuition increases, but I am currently spending an hour writing a persuasive essay supporting them. I feel like a hypocrite.
Yes. To resolve that uncomfortable feeling of hypocrisy, the theory predicts your brain will shift your underlying attitude.
So you start to convince yourself.
Exactly. You start thinking, well, maybe a tuition increase isn't the worst thing in the world. It could fund better dorms.
Okay, makes sense.
So the 2024 study tested this, and they actually confirmed the first part. The students did shift their attitudes in favor of the tuition increase after writing the essay.
Then what failed? If that worked, what's the problem?
The theory has a second crucial prediction.
Which is?
The attitude change should be much stronger if the person feels they had a choice in writing the essay.
Choice.
Right. Because if someone holds a clipboard and forces you to do it, you don't really feel dissonance.
Yeah, you have an external justification. You just say,
Yeah.
I was forced.
Exactly. But if you are given a choice and you voluntarily choose to write it, the dissonance is internal. It's your fault.
Therefore, the attitude change should be greater to compensate.
Yes. So they set up a high choice group and a low choice group.
Great, I'm following.
And the 2024 study found that having a choice didn't seem to change their attitudes any more than not having a choice.
Oh.
It failed to replicate that specific part of the theory. The New Yorker looked at that failure and declared cognitive dissonance a myth.
But wait, did the students in the low choice group actually have zero choice? Like, were they truly forced?
That is the glaring methodological flaw Dr. Harmon-Jones points out. When you look at the raw data, the researchers didn't actually eliminate the sense of agency.
Are you kidding?
Nope. Even the students assigned to the low choice group reported feeling a moderately high level of perceived choice on their surveys.
That completely ruins the baseline.
Complete.
So the researchers essentially gave one group a giant slice of cake, and the low choice group a slightly smaller slice of cake, and then concluded that the size of the cake doesn't matter because both groups got a sugar rush.
That is exactly what happened.
They didn't actually create a zero cake scenario to compare it to.
It is a critical error in experimental design, and, the broader scientific community caught it immediately.
I would hope so.
Following the publication of that 2024 paper, 2 separate groups of researchers got hold of the data.
And what did they do?
They threw out the arbitrary group assignments and reanalyzed everything based entirely on the participants' self-reported ratings of perceived choice. They found exactly what cognitive dissonance theory predicts.
No way.
Yes. The higher the perceived choice a student felt, the more their attitude shifted.
So the data supported the theory the entire time.
The entire time.
The original researchers just botched the group setup. But why did those researchers pick such a fragile study to replicate in the first place?
Well, Dr. Harmon-Jones highlights a really fascinating historical context from a researcher named Bornstein in 1990.
Okay.
The original essay study they were trying to replicate is from 1983, and it was notoriously finicky even back then.
Really?
Yeah, even in the original 1983 paper, the researchers ran the experiment twice, and it only produced the desired effect once.
Oh, wow.
It was a messy, highly sensitive method from the very beginning.
I mean, if you want to prove a theory wrong, picking the most fragile, historically unreliable method to test it is certainly a choice.
It really brings up the issue of experimenter bias.
Yeah.
When researchers enter a massive replication attempt expecting to fail, when they are actively looking for what is called a null result, meaning no statistical effect, subtle biases just creep in.
How does that actually physically happen in a lab, though? Do they just fudge the numbers?
No, rarely is it malicious number fudging. It is usually unconscious.
Like what?
It's how an assistant phrases the instructions. It's their tone of voice or microexpressions when handing a student a survey.
Oh, I see.
If a researcher expects the student not to care about the choice, their dismissive tone might prompt the student to just rush through the rating scale.
So the human element is the problem.
Yes. Human psychology is incredibly difficult to measure because both the subjects and the observers are flawed, biased humans.
So human bias is muddying the waters of human experiments. But here's where it gets really interesting.
It does take a turn here.
What happens if we remove the humans from the testing pool entirely? If biology and experimenter bias are the problem, we need a non-biological test subject.
Exactly. And Dr. Harmon-Jones points to a brand new 2025 study by Lair and colleagues.
Okay.
They decided to test cognitive dissonance using ChatGPT 4.0.
In artificial intelligence.
Yes.
But wait, ChatGPT doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a nervous system to experience the physiological threat response of cognitive dissonance.
Right.
How could it possibly participate in a psychology experiment?
Well, the researchers took the exact same experimental setups, forcing behaviors, offering choices, measuring attitude alignment, and applied them to the large language model.
Okay, so they prompted it like a human subject.
Yes, they tracked its subsequent text outputs to see if its attitudes shifted.
Oh, yeah.
And the findings are staggering. ChatGPT actually changes its text outputs to be consistent with the behaviors it was forced to simulate.
No way. And when it is given a simulated choice over its behavior.
It changes its attitudes even more.
Wow.
It perfectly mirrors the exact prediction of the theory that the flawed 2024 human replication struggled with.
I really want you to think about how profound this is. I mean, an AI doesn't have an ego to protect.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't feel embarrassed. It operates purely on token prediction based on its training data.
Exactly.
And its training data is the vast, almost incomprehensible ocean of human language, literature, and recorded online behavior.
The AI is statistically simulating human behavioral patterns. Dr. Harmon-Jones argues this is an incredibly powerful validation of the theory.
It makes sense.
The LLM learned how to act human by absorbing billions of data points.
Right.
The fact that it spontaneously mimics cognitive dissonance when given free choice means that this behavioral tendency is fundamentally baked into the semantic web of humanity.
It's just a part of us.
It is such a universal structural reality of human output that a machine learned to do it just by mapping our words.
So we are dissonance machines,
Yeah.
and we accidentally built an AI that reflects that flaw right back at us.
That's one way to look at it.
We've got 1950s cults, stressed-out university students, and chatbots all displaying the exact same mechanism.
Exact same one.
But the wildest part of this Psychology Today article is what happened behind the scenes with the journalist who wrote the takedown piece.
Oh, yes. Dr. Harmon-Jones revealed a rather stunning detail.
Tell me.
After the New Yorker piece came out, he reached out to two of his colleagues, both of whom are world-renowned experts on cognitive dissonance theory.
Okay.
He found out that the New Yorker reporter actually did contact both of these experts during the research phase.
Wait, so the reporter had conversations with the leading authorities.
Yes.
What did those experts tell the reporter?
They gave the reporter a multitude of criticisms regarding the debunking narrative.
They pushed back.
Oh, heavily. They explained the nuance of Festermer's early work and the 5 conditions. They specifically warned the reporter about the massive flaws in that 2024 replication study with the essays and the perceived choice.
They handed over the counter evidence.
They laid it all out.
And what did the reporter do with all of that disconfirming evidence?
What's fascinating here is that when the final article was published to millions of readers, none of those experts' concerns were included.
Not one.
Not a single warning. The author engaged in selective avoidance, actively filtering out any information that was inconsistent with their goal of discrediting the theory.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
We have a journalist who started with a strong narrative premise that cognitive dissonance is a myth. They were confronted by leading experts presenting undeniable facts that contradicted that premise. And instead of changing their narrative to align with reality, the discomfort was too great.
the journalist literally engaged in cognitive dissonance to write an article claiming cognitive dissonance isn't real.
It is a beautifully unintentional performance art piece.
It really is ironic.
The reporter perfectly demonstrated that no one is immune to these mechanisms. When our beliefs or our professional narratives are threatened by reality, the mind just builds a fortress.
It highlights exactly why this psychological concept has endured for 70 years despite constant scrutiny.
Just to recap the wild journey we've been on today,
Whoa.
we started with the 1956 doomsday cult where people doubled down on their beliefs when the world didn't end, giving us the foundational theory.
Right.
We saw how that theory is backed up by thousands of controlled studies, including the experiment where contradictory texts only strengthen religious conviction.
Yes.
We unraveled how a flawed 2024 replication study tried to tear the whole thing down because researchers forgot how to properly measure choice.
Exactly.
We explored how ChatGPT mathematically proves that dissonance is literally baked into the training data of humanity.
That was wild.
And finally, we watched a journalist brilliantly, if accidentally, prove the theory by ignoring expert evidence to protect their own storyline.
It is a remarkable sequence showing how science, journalism, and human nature constantly collide.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We just spent a lot of time talking about how an AI learned cognitive dissonance from us, and how a journalist used selective avoidance to filter out facts they didn't like.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
you wonder, If machines have successfully mapped this human flaw, are the social media algorithms that feed you your daily news actually designed to be automated cognitive dissonance machines?
Oh, wow.
Like if the algorithm knows that contradictory information causes you psychological discomfort, are they intentionally filtering out opposing views?
That's a scary thought.
Are they building a perfect little echo chamber around you just to protect you from the physical discomfort of ever being wrong, all to keep you scrolling?
That is a highly relevant and rather terrifying question to consider regarding how our tech interacts with our psychology.
It really is. Something to think about next time you catch yourself immediately rejecting an article before you even finish reading the headline. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious out there.